Howdy, and welcome to the Lost Rider podcast. It's an honor and a privilege to address you in the capacity of an interviewer, reporter, and media member. Too many modern media outlets have forgone the integrity and responsibility required of credible information sources. What you will receive here are straightforward discussions with legislators, agency leaders, biologists, engineers, doctors, and countless other experts that have the answers to questions often circulated as kitchen table issues. The title Lost Rider may be thought of literally as well as in the metaphorical sense. While there has been the instance that I was momentarily a little turned around at night in a wilderness area, the idea of being a lost rider in life, well, that fits most folks at some time. These renderings are coming to you in the form of the 25-year-old radio program, The News from the Camp House. It still airs every Saturday morning at 6:30 a.m. Central Time on KULM 98.3 FM out of Columbus, Texas. The original intent was to relate outdoor topics to the general public. Immediately, it was found that all issues are relatable to the outdoors and that people are people. They all play a role and they all have a vested interest. It's this program's desire to answer common questions about how the world works, how it will operate in the future, and what's the holdup? So please listen, enjoy, and never hesitate to contact us with more questions and feedback. Good morning and welcome to this weekend's edition of News from the Camp House. Listening post to the Texas Sportsman Association is Herman Brune. This weekend's edition is also brought to us by Shell's Bend Social Club, country club for folks who don't have a country club. All right, I'll tell you what, we're up here in Reno, Nevada this weekend. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to visit with Chester Moore. Chester Moore is a Texas outdoor writer. He's a documentary person. What do you call that?
Producer, writer, narrator.
Okay, all right. Yeah, he does documentaries these days. He's also the managing editor, main editor at Texas Fishing Game.
Editor-in-chief. Yes, sir. Editor-in-chief, Texas Fishing Game.
All right. And so he's up here. He's been collecting interviews, and he's been in this game longer than I have, but I pick up pretty quick. I let him go get a half a dozen interviews, and then I just interview him and get all the information at one time. So that's what we're doing this morning. Anyway, Chester, how y'all doing? How you enjoying Reno?
Doing great. Here, my buddy Paul Fazinski, who does the filmmaking part of it, and I do the producing, narrating, writing. It's a great team, and we've been having a good time. We've interviewed, I think, 16 people in the last couple of days.
All right, and how far will that take you? When you do interview 16 people, where does that show up? And, tell me why.
So the work we're doing here is contractor work with the Wild Sheep Foundation. Mm-hmm. So we're working on a couple of different documentary projects for them. And it's almost evenly split, like 8 and 7 or something like that, or whatever it is, 9 and 7 between the two different documentaries we're doing. But, you'll have 4 hours worth of interview and you're going to have a 15-minute documentary, or 20-minute documentary.
Right,
so
right.
It's down to getting the absolute best out of the people to tell the story that we're telling, And it's been exciting because one thing about wild sheep conservation and the amazing work of the Wild Sheep Foundation, it's never dull. There's always something new, something cutting edge. And one of them was like a historical look back at things. And it's been neat to see where these projects are going and have come from.
All right, and I need to reiterate something that my listeners, we didn't say it, but Wild Sheep Foundation, if you grew up reading Jack O'Connor and all those guys that like we did, wild sheep, that's the elite hunters of North America. Wild sheep, bighorn sheep, desert bighorns, Dall sheep, stone sheep. That's the elite hunters, the guys who go out backpack, hunt for 9 or 10 days, climbing mountains, hunting sheep. This is what we consider the elite hunters of North America. I mean, God, we love elk hunting, we love mule deer hunting, we love whitetail hunting. But the sheep hunters, those are the guys that are really kind of doing it. But sheep need taking care of, and they're kind of a ticklish breed particular species when it comes to wild sheep as far as health, I think. I think disease and health and habitat and all that kind of stuff. So that is the purpose of the Wild Sheep Foundation. I believe to raise money for conservation to manage and oversee and take care of these sheep. Tell me where I'm wrong.
Perfect. Yeah, to put and keep wild sheep on the mountain is the vision and the mission statement. And there's a lot of issues with wild sheep, but the number one is disease.
Keep talking.
The number one issue is disease. Mycoplasma pneumoniae is a respiratory pathogen, and that makes them susceptible to all kinds of problems. And what happened was when domestic sheep with European lineage came across the West, we had maybe 1.5 million or so bighorns, and then by 1960 we had 25,000 bighorns. Mm-hmm. All of that wasn't disease, but the vast majority was disease issues, which still persist. And so a lot of the work from groups like the Wild Sheep Foundation is translocating sheep into different herds, maybe from different states to help start a new herd, research, collaring, disease research. So lots of things going in it. And because there aren't enough wild sheep to pay their way with just a regular permit, so there has to be other people helping different ways of wild sheep.
All right. Tell me a little bit about some of the people you talk to, some of the different type. I know you go to each person, you're trying to get a little different angle on this whole aspect. So, like who?
Yeah, so Gray Thornton, the CEO of Wild Sheep Foundation, and we were talking about the impact of these conservation permits. That Wild Sheep Foundation. Not Wild Sheep Foundation alone, but chapters, affiliates, and all the NGOs dedicated to wild sheep. And these permits are paying for a gigantic proportion of all wild sheep conservation in North America, because a lot of the state and provincial agencies, they don't have as much money as wild sheep takes. I mean, like wild sheep require a lot. White-tailed deer, we're basically trying to find ways to keep populations down and manage for big antlers.
Right.
Elk are doing pretty well.
Right.
And, habitat's an issue. But wild sheep have habitat issues, predation issues, and disease issues. So there aren't enough tags for the public in general to pay for, all the conservation. So these conservation permits, raffles, all this is a live radio show, by the way.
Yeah.
Someone had a dog bite me on a show.
Be sweet.
So it's just these visionary people that started what was called the Foundation for North American Wild Sheep in 1977, and it became the Wild Sheep Foundation. And then you have groups in Texas, like the Texas Bighorn Society, a wonderful organization, and you got the Rocky Mountain Bighorn Society in Colorado and many other groups that are all putting in to put and keep wild sheep on the mountain.
Good deal. All right. Yes, Texas, we've got Texas Bighorn Society. Texas has, a few people know that Texas has desert bighorns. It's out on, was that Elephant Mountain out there?
Yeah, Elephant Mountain Wildlife Management Area, Sierra Diablo Wildlife Management Area, Black Gap Wildlife Management Area, and then private lands. There's also some in Big Bend National Park and those areas as well. But we never had in the last 100 years a big population, but the population had gotten close to like post-1900 levels, around 1,500 bighorns, and then we didn't have a disease issue, and then we had a disease issue, and it knocked the population way back. And that disease issue is believed to be traced to something very familiar to many Texans, which is the aoudad. There's about, at high points, 1,500 bighorns west of the Pecos, but there's somewhere between 75,000 and 100,000 aoudad west of the Pecos.
Right.
So there's a lot of issues with that, but there was a really great victory that Texas Bighorn Society, Texas Parks and Wildlife, of course, and Wild Sheep Foundation had when bighorns were translocated from Elephant Mountain to the Franklin Mountains out in El Paso and Franklin Mountain State Park in 2024 in December. And that was historical because that's the first time the Franklin Mountains have had bighorns in over 100 years. And they're doing great. They had lambs this year, and they're doing great.
All right. Okay. So you've been covering this for these guys a couple of years now.
Yeah, I've been doing quite a bit of rights. It's a real honor and privilege to get to write with them, such a great organization, doing some contract work for them. And it's always interesting. It's always inspiring to see like this Herculean effort to help, a game animal and incredible. And you mentioned like earlier, it's like the elite hunters. Well, these are really like the elite game animal. They live in the highest places and they go to the craziest spots and it's the harshest habitats, like them and a mountain goat. what else in North America lives in a more harder to get place?
Right.
And so just thinking about those animals on the mountain up there, I think always, I'm from the Texas coast, man. I live at 14 feet elevation.
Right.
I may never draw a sheep tag, and I may never get in sheep shape either to get one. But
you're from Beaumont.
Yeah, I'm from Orange, which is right
okay.
there. So it's a long way from sheep country, but I've always been intrigued by them. You know, when I was a kid, I used to sit in my dad's lap, and we would put together scrapbooks of animals we want to go hunt and go see. And for a nickel a piece, I could go to the thrift store and buy every magazine I had. So I bought all the outdoor magazines: Sports Field, Field and Stream, Outdoor Life, Saltwater Sportsman, and I had multiple scrapbooks. And I went back and looked at them. About half the photos in the big game, I had fishing ones and big game ones. About half the photos in the big game ones were wild sheep.
Okay.
I must have clipped every single wild sheep photo I found, because I've always had an interest in it, and it's just something that intrigues me.
Well, yes, of course. Wild sheep they're just, well, they're kind of a rarity. You don't just see them as often as you see deer or elk or any of those types of things. And we know they're up in the peaks. But you've been around the country a little bit. You've not just Texas and not just out in West Texas. You've been up around Wyoming, Montana, and some of the places, and got to go do some film work.
Yeah, and I photographed bighorns in West Texas, Colorado a bunch, Wyoming, Montana, and Nevada as well. And Nevada was funny because there's a kind of a legendary spot where they show up at a baseball field, like desert bighorns. And I went there, and the whole place, like, it was covered in sheep crap, And the lady goes, "You looking for the sheep? They left an hour ago." And I'm like, "Oh, great." So I drove over to Hoover Dam, and I found a pretty nice ram up on this mountain. It was dark, almost dark. I said, "I'll come back in the morning to find him." And there he was. And here's Mr. Flatlander going to go take a picture of this ram. So I start going up this pretty loose stuff. And I get pretty high up there, and then I slide down about 30 feet, make a bunch of noise, and I'm like, this ram he's gone now. And he just turns around and looks at me from up high. I was like, who is this poor idiot? And he walked down, and he stood on a shelf about 20 yards ahead for like 30 minutes, and I got these amazing photos.
They gave you a picture.
Yeah, he's like, this poor guy's, he's got a camera. We got to help him out a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
And then he had a collar, he had a tag in his ear.
Yeah.
So it was kind of neat as being a member of Texas Outdoor Writers Association, being an outdoor communicator, to be able to use that photo to tell people about the research done through things like ear tags and neck collaring. So I like when I can take something in the field and help tell a story like that.
All right. Okay. I'll tell you what, let's take a quick break. Thank the folks who let us come on here every Saturday morning. We'll be right back. Thank goodness for all the great sponsors we have here at News from the Camp House. H-E-B Food Stores. That's Stephen Tice at H-E-B. He helps me. He helps the community. He's a great man. I'm so thankful H-E-B loosened him up, lets him go around and sponsor a few things. H-E-B's got all your food needs. It's the greatest food store we got here in Columbus. Thank goodness for H-E-B. First State Bank. You go over to the First State Bank, they'll take care of all your loans, all your deposits, your savings, anything you need. Bunch of great hometown people over there. You got Celia Tobias, John Pollock. Everybody over there is looking out for you. Miss Barbara Barta. It's a great bunch of folks at the First State Bank is also sponsoring News from the Camp House. First State Bank takes care of all my business. Baumgart Agency, Susan Baumgart at the Baumgart Agencies, her and Germania. She told me to plug Germania. Germania is a insurance that she likes everybody to know about. The Baumgart Agencies. Miss Susan and I are classmates. Being classmates, she got me out of high school, sat right beside her, put us in alphabetical order where I could copy. And Susan Baumgart over at the Baumgart Agency, taking care of all your insurance needs. Lyco Realty, one of the original sponsors of News from the Camp House. Lyco Realty, the oldest real estate company in the county, and for the last 3 years voted the favorite realtor in the county. Lyco Realty, that's Miss Kimberly Johnson. That's Crockett's granddaughter. More kinfolks and classmates and great people from Colorado County. People from Colorado County helping people from Colorado County. That's great. Oh, thank goodness for all these wonderful people come to me want to be sponsors for News from the Camp House. Good morning and welcome to the second half of this week's News from the Camp House. We're here this morning with Chester Moore managing executive editor of Texas Fish and Game Magazine, also documentary producer, and does quite a bit of work with the Wild Sheep Foundation. We're up in Reno, Nevada this morning. We're at the Wild Sheep Show, and Chester's been working on a couple of documentaries for the Wild Sheep Foundation and interviewing a bunch of folks up here. Wild sheep are intriguing. They're so intriguing because they're so damn hard to hunt. You got to be in shape to go to the top of the mountain, go crawling around. I've done it several times, and I come back and I say, yeah, I had a lot of fun, but I'm gonna think about it again before I go sneak off and try it again. Especially at my age, and with the shape my wheels are in, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to make another one of those kind of hunts or not. But now when you're making these documentaries, you got to go crawling up the hill to go get there, right?
Well, I'm more on the production side of it. So organizing interviews, I'm writing some script, helping set up interviews, and then do some narrating as well. Mm-hmm. My buddy Paul's went out and filmed one with them in a separate documentary I wasn't a part of. But for the most part, I produced with Paul a documentary out in Yellowstone. Okay. For example, so we're running around Yellowstone. We didn't find any sheep there, but we went around and we're running around bison herds and looking at grizzlies and everything else. So there is that aspect of getting out there. But there's also that part of me with things I work on is I was very inspired in my life by Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom.
Sure.
And that's foundational. And I kind of like being the voice of something, or help writing the narrative of it and tell that story. Mm-hmm. So I can remember Marlon Perkins standing up in front of that board, and there's a picture of an elephant, and he's telling the story, and they segue out into there, Right. And I'm actually working on a project myself that's going to be, the best way I could say it would be like maybe a North American wildlife-centric version of being attacked by the dog again, of Mutual of Omaha's Old Wild Kingdom. Which is cool because they still have a show. Peter Gross, who replaced Marlon Perkins in 85 to 88 or whatever it was, they got a new version of it out there.
Okay.
And really good. I met him. He's a really cool guy. But I think my best role in anything is where I can write, and then maybe when I can have the chance to organize and speak. That's my best part of it. And even just the writing part, I do a lot more writing with Wild Sheep and other groups than I do any production stuff, Okay. Way more writing than I do documentary. I'm just really recently doing the documentary part of stuff. And one of the things is when you're writing a story, it's important, especially if you get into stuff like scientific things, to be able to be relatable to people. And my part of the journey is, I think, to tell people, to make it relatable, and to hopefully inspire people to learn more about the species, or how they can have an entry point to getting involved in the conservation of it.
All right. Okay, so 2 documentaries. What are they?
We're working on one, helping with one on a Hell's Canyon initiative. We just basically organize interviews, and I think we're passing it off to someone else. But we're working on one on wild sheep economy.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Break that down a little bit. When we're talking about conservation and trying to save, what kind of dollars?
It takes a lot of dollars. So, for example, we have auctions here.
Right.
And they're going to raise several $1 million,
Yes.
For that, because sheep can't pay their way otherwise.
All right, when you walk in the front doors here, there's a big map there that says something about $73 million in the last 10 years or something like that they're looking to raise. But
yeah, that's they have a number that they've raised since the beginning. But just in the last few years, out west, it's millions of dollars a year into these projects. I mean, there was a guy last year bought a tag in New Mexico for $1.3 million.
Holy man.
Which is the record. That's an outlier,
Yeah.
But still, all that goes right back into the agencies, the departments earmarked for that conservation. And you know, wildlife agencies are strapped for cash.
Right.
And so for them to be able to auction things off of these wildlife philanthropists being able to help with this is amazing. And then you have like raffles, like a lot of us do.
Right,
you know,
right.
I'm not bidding on one of these sheep tags. I'm an outdoor writer, but I do take part in some auctions. You know, I mean, some raffles.
Sure.
You know, and I just keep telling them in Texas, at a big time Texas hunt, they keep drawing the wrong name. It doesn't say Chester Moore on there. But there's a chance for everyone to participate. Most people will never hunt a sheep.
All right. Did you go to the function they had yesterday evening, the One Under?
The Less Than One Club.
Let's explain what that is.
It's a great program at Wild Sheep Foundation. So you become a member, and then you can join the Less Than One Club. I think it's I might be wrong, like $40 a year.
Okay.
And you get drawn for a sheep tag. Like usually it's Doll sheep, maybe a Desert Bighorn. Sometimes there's an international version. It might do a Markhor or an Ibex or something. Mm-hmm. And the idea is it's the only club you want to be kicked out of. In other words, once you go ahead and get to harvest that wild sheep, you're no longer the Less Than One Club. You've harvested one.
Right.
So it's a chance for anybody to pay like $40, and it's like maybe 1,000. I don't know how many people in the room.
Okay. See okay. We're getting around to my point. The Less Than One Club is for people who have never shot a wild sheep.
Yeah.
So we're sitting at the Wild Sheep Foundation show, and the line was a mile long and 4 people, wide. Going in there, and I thought, good Lord, nobody here at this show has ever shot a wild sheep, is what it looked like.
Well, what it is, you think about it, if you do a state lottery, and maybe people from around the country can also apply for that state lottery, you might have 10,000, 15,000 people in for those tags. Well, if you're in a room and maybe there's 1,500 people for the tags, or whatever it is, got a lot better odds, and there's multiple tags being drawn.
Right.
And it's just the Wild Sheep Foundation is very conscientious. I've noticed in the work that I've done with them, just being a member, of allowing everyone to get some skin in the game. From the guy who can barely afford to pay his bills, he might join the Less Than One Club, and maybe he draws that Doll sheep permit.
Right.
To the guy who can bid on the big permit in New Mexico or wherever. And so it's all about the resource first, but they're all very conscientious about making sure everyone has a chance to go out there and participate. And I think that's amazing.
Yes, it's a lot of fun. It's really it's great. I mean, yes, absolutely. It gets everyone involved. And when you look at, I sit around and watch people all day, and it's the demographics. How many younger, now I'm looking at them and I'm going, how many younger couples are here?
Yeah.
And younger families are here. And I'm going, I know dang well these are not sheep hunters, but they're at this sheep show. And I said, this is just great, whether they're here for entertainment value or whatever, but they're learning about, wild sheep conservation.
Yeah.
And I'm going, this is a great deal.
Yeah, we're right next to the Youth Conservation Wildlife Experience. There'll be 600 or 700 local kids come through and get to see all this stuff. And a lot of young people, a lot of young couples. And it's not, what benefits wild sheep doesn't just benefit wild sheep. When they do a controlled burn on a mountain for a wild sheep habitat, that benefits everything else. And so, like, for example, when Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation maybe does some kind of habitat project, it doesn't just necessarily benefit elk, it benefits mule deer and turkeys and everything else.
Right.
So it's great that there are organizations that have advocacy like this and keep the resource at heart. To me, that's the important part. We can have our squabbles over this, that, and the other, but if we keep the resource at heart and keeping people access to like the North American model, then I think we're going to stay on track.
Well, that's always been my deal, is if everybody would get on the same page, everyone understood the North American model. I can't understand why anybody would not, everybody agree this is the way we need to manage, control, conserve wildlife. It's just a matter of teaching people and getting it out there and finding ways to do it. And I think documentaries is a great way to get outside of preaching to the choir.
Well, produced my dream project last year, which TOWA was one of the sponsors, which was a documentary about great white sharks. It's my favorite critter other than wild sheep, the great whites. And when me and Paul did all the editing and the filming part, and we're sitting there talking to one of the top researchers in the world, and he bust out a question about Dingle Johnson dollars, and even white sharks, and there's even an aspect to that, right, on the fisheries. So I think it's important to support science-based policy and to keep the resource. And if it doesn't hurt the resource, I support it. If I had $1 billion, I wouldn't shoot an elephant. Just not my thing. It's not my thing. But if going over and shooting an elephant under scientific management works for those African nations and a hunter wants to go do it, I totally get it. I support that, right?
Right.
You know, I'm more of a waterfowl, pig, Texas deer guy, and if I could ever draw a sheep tag or whatever, but I support whatever works, and it doesn't matter. My personal tastes have nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right,
you know,
right.
It's all about what helps the resource keep going. Because I want there to be more elephants, and I want there to be more habitat in Africa and in the swamps of Southeast Texas and the mountains of Wyoming and all of that. I want everything to benefit, and it requires the system. Look, the North American model wildlife conservation system isn't perfect. There is no perfect system, but it's the closest thing to perfection on the planet. And there's a reason. Texas, for example, we have 5 million whitetail last count. We hadn't been at 5 million in a long time, but we busted out through some drought cycles and got 5 million. There was 5 million in 1990, around there. What's amazing is the amount of development we've had since 1990, destroying habitat. But because of good management, we can still have those numbers. What would it be if we didn't have development? So sometimes some of these wildlife populations are never going to grow past where they are because of the loss of habitat. But being able to sustain the carrying capacity of those animals the best we can on the land through this scientific management and allowing the public to access it is just paramount. It's important because I want to see sheep on the mountain. I want to see sharks in the ocean. I want to hear songbirds singing,
Sure.
And all of that is about people who care about, wildlife and the environment. So if someone is listening and they don't hunt or don't fish, but they like wildlife, I would ask you, first off, go watch on YouTube my friend Paul Fuzinski's documentary, The Hunt Within. It talks about the North American model, his journey as becoming a hunter. But also just read about the North American model of wildlife conservation and go ask some good questions because there's a lot of good stuff you can learn.
All right. Chester, thanks for being with us this morning. We're a little bit out of time, but thanks for being with us.
Hey, Herman, thanks for being an awesome dude, telling me cool stories and being my friend. I appreciate it.
All right. Folks, I hope you enjoyed it this morning. Coming to you from Reno, Nevada. Now, y'all all go out. Y'all have a big weekend. Have fun. Be safe. Have a good time. And y'all just remember, pretty much any day is sure a good day to be out in the woods.